Okay, so let's talk about three signs the fearful avoidant attachment style isn't that interested in you. And then we'll talk about what to do. Okay, so this is a topic I get asked all the time. I definitely understand that fearful avoidant attachment styles can give mixed messages and it can be confusing. So we're going to settle it in this video. And at the end of this video, if you stick around, we'll talk about some strategies you can use to really get out of this space of confusion. So, sign number one that the fearful avoidant isn't that interested, and at least not interested enough to really have a relationship romantically that's worth pursuing, is that they may say a lot of things, but they don't follow through. And I don't mean like, oh, sometimes they miss a phone call or don't text back. I mean like the big things. I mean, you have a fearful avoidant, you text back and forth all the time, but really, even though you might live, within 20 minutes of each other, so the fearful avoidant isn't really showing up for dates. Maybe they went on one date with you or two, but they're not actually following through despite continuing the conversation. The reason this first point is very important is unless you're in like a specific exception, something like a long distance relationship, for example, fearful avoidants show up for the things that they care about. They're very passionate people. They tend to be very like intense and focused on what it is that they care about, whether that's friendships, whether that's romantic relationships, whether that's partying and going out, whether that's achieving something in their career. Like this tends to be a big thing. So if a fearful avoidant isn't serious, they're not going to show up. And that's going to be really, really telling in and of itself. Number two, you don't see any dynamic where there's a sense of actual consistency being threaded throughout. So let's say, for example, you are seeing the fearful avoidant every couple weeks. So there's like some element of consistency there. I mean, like baseline consistency according to something that your typical securely attached person would show up for. And it's funny because we often think like, oh, if I'm dating somebody and they're not securely attached, then I can make all of these exceptions. So much of what we talk about in this channel is not intended to like give people exceptions for you to not be treated properly. It's about understanding people's attachment styles so you don't take their behaviors personally, but that shouldn't mean that you accidentally like over empathize with somebody and in doing so you weaponize your own empathy against yourself, right? It shouldn't be like, "Oh, because I can see that the fearful avoidants are operating in their feelings minus their fears. I can see that push-pull pattern within them. Then it means if I really like somebody and I'm looking for a serious partner in my life, that I should be okay with, seeing somebody once a month and not getting these texts back, on an ongoing basis. And so, there should be this thread of consistency. And what you'll generally see in terms of this thread of consistency is that fearful avoidant attachment styles, they will text back within like a reasonable period of time. They'll see you once a week if they're really interested. Again, maybe some exceptions being long distance relationships, perhaps some exceptions being like somebody's working two jobs and they're a single parent. But there should be this element where literally you are seeing somebody regularly, even in those sorts of cases, right? Once a week is pretty reasonable. And if there's not something where there's this consistency of seeing each other, they'll usually make up for it through like a FaceTime call, a phone call, a deep conversation, a really vulnerable text message that's really sweet and loving and kind. Like there's going to be something there to demonstrate their interest. And the thread of consistency should be examples, would be, seeing somebody once a week. Another example would be that they really don't go more than like half a day without responding to you over text message. So if you text at night, maybe they'll respond the next morning. If you text in the morning, maybe they have a really busy day, but they'll text you by the evening. They won't go these like 3, 4 day periods without texting back. Generally, if you're seeing that, there's less of a romantic interest there for the fearful avoidant attachment style and maybe something more along the lines of like curiosity or friendship. So, really looking out for those sorts of dynamics is really important. And then number three, you will see the fearful avoidant communicate their care, right? Whether it's through acts of services, whether, sweet things that they're doing, whether it's through words of affirmation, even in moments, like even over text, they'll generally like share that they are interested. They tend to be quite forthcoming about those things. When they're triggered, they may shut away for a period of time, but when they're not triggered, all the other times that they're not triggered, you will generally see that they are pretty validating as a general rule. And they will open up and share a little bit about their feelings and their interests. So These are three major things that the fearful avoidant will do if they're serious. But on the flip side, them not being serious would be you're not seeing them once a week, or a couple times a week even. You are not hearing back from them for days at a time, and you're not really seeing any expressed interest with them going out of their way or trying to sort of initiate seeing each other or having deeper conversations. So if you're not seeing those things, what should you be doing? Well, number one, you have to set a deadline. I think this is so important. We have to be able to like actually set a deadline and be like, look, I'm not going to keep investing in this person or this dynamic forever. I'm going to do this for 2 more weeks or 1 more week. Or, if you've been dating somebody for 6 months, maybe you say, okay, I'm going to give it a month. Things are really good. They've kind of fallen off. I'm going to give it a month to see if we can see some progress. And if we don't, then I'm going to walk away guilt and regret free because I know that I've tried everything that I can. And so you want to have the deadline. Then you want to, within that deadline period of time, have the conversations. Say, look, I appreciate you. I appreciate getting to know you. I really like this connection here. And at the same time, there's a few things that are missing for me that I would really need to see in terms of there being progress so I could know that this was the right relationship dynamic for me to be investing in. Those things are, for example, right? Just as an example, more consistency. I want to make sure that we're seeing each other once a week. I know things are busy, but once a week for me is a baseline. A second thing would be, I want us to be able to have some kind of communication that's ongoing. And so that would look like for me, not going 3 or 4 days without being in communication, to touch base a little bit here and there each day, even if it's just really briefly one time a day, to know that there is some consistency. So you give examples, right? Like I'm sort of just coming up with ideas that you might be interested in communicating, but you have to share those needs. And if a fearful avoidant is really interested, they're going to show up for those needs, even if they have like their feelings minus their fears. But if they're not interested, they're going to pull away. And I know that people are like, oh, I'm scared to do that because what if the person pulls away? Nothing will be worse than just extending being in no man's land for even longer, only to have the person pull away anyway. So you might as well get to the bottom of it, find out what's going on. Um, and there will be a point where if you're not seeing the progress, then it's not meant to be, right? Like, don't you want a relationship where somebody's working with you and growing with you and expanding with you? And so if you're not seeing it, it's also for you to know that, right? It's important information for you to know what's going to make you happy. So I hope this makes sense. If you want to do a much deeper dive into like actually repairing relationship dynamics or communicating about difficult stuff, you can jump into our communication course. It's all about how to master conflict communication through difficult times, through relationship challenges. You can check it out fully for free for 7 days using the link down below. Then this will help you as well have those difficult conversations. So if you're like, I want to bring these things up, but I don't know how. Sometimes it's actually because we have limiting beliefs. Like we actually have our own fears about communicating. So an example would be if I communicate, I'm going to be rejected or I'm going to be disliked or abandoned. As long as you're living by those limiting beliefs and you're not actually opening yourself and sharing and communicating, you are absolutely mitigating the opportunity for your needs to be met in a relationship and for you to actually move towards a securely attached relationship. Because part of what securely attached people do is they communicate. They share with each other. They talk about needs. They talk about boundaries or standards that they have in a relationship. And they vet, right? They actually take the time to see, like, is this the right relationship for me or not? And if it's not, they're okay with it because they realize, okay, this isn't a good fit. It's not going to be something that fulfills me anyways. I might as well leave this relationship with respect, with compassion, and find something that is the right fit. So, they give themselves permission to walk away from things that are not working. And so, sometimes I see when we've got these limiting beliefs, we get afraid and we hold on too tight or for too long, but we have to be able to free ourselves from what's not working so we can find what really will. So anyways, really important to have those conversations. If you need that extra support, you can check out that course for free for 7 days down below. You won't actually be charged anything until the 7th day. So if you go in there and you check it all out, you get free access to the whole of PDS to just scope out, to look around. So I hope you enjoy that. And if you have questions for me about this topic, please share in the comments down below. If there's other videos you want to see, let me know. I go back in through here, I'll take a look. And please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to this channel if you're getting a lot of value. And thank you so much for being here, and thank you for watching.